CIA for leaving my family speechless by refusing to babysit 12 kids at Christmas? My name is Ava and I am 21. I remember last Christmas. I spent 6 hours trapped in my bedroom with 8 kids. I listened to the adults laughing and eating a hot dinner downstairs. When I finally went down, all that was left were dirty plates and cold leftovers. Not a single thank you. This morning when my sister Megan tried to hand her kids over to me, that memory flashed through my mind. Ava, listen, she said with the same tone and the same expectation, but I was no longer the same person. No, I said, and I enjoyed the silence that followed. Our house on a tree-lined street in a quiet Midwestern suburb was always filled with the echoes of my parents' pride in their older daughters. Megan got straight A's again. They would smile at dinner. Haley made the varsity cheer squad. They would announce to anyone who would listen. I just sat there pushing the green beans around my plate, feeling like a shadow in my own home. I remember the day Megan brought her first boyfriend home at 16. I was only 4, spying through the staircase railings, while this tall boy with gelled hair nervously shook our dad's hand. Haley was not far behind, starting to date at 15. They were both so beautiful, so confident, so everything I was not. My mom would say, barely looking at me while she helped Megan pick out prom dresses, "Ava, finish your homework." She was always discussing college applications with Haley. I learned early on to be self-sufficient, to do my own thing, and to not need the attention that seemed permanently focused on my sister's achievements. One morning when I was 7 years old, Mom burst into the kitchen. She said, her voice electric with excitement, Megan was accepted into the state university. The news was followed by a special celebration dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. While I sat in my usual spot, invisible as always, Haley went off to college 2 years later and suddenly I was alone. Alone in a house that felt too empty and yet too full of their lingering presence. Their bedrooms became sanctuaries of their past lives. Trophies, photos, and memories preserved exactly as they had left them. Meanwhile, I carved out my own space. I learned to find comfort in solitude and tried not to care when every conversation somehow circled back to my amazing older sisters. The real turning point came when I was 15. Megan, now married and living in a subdivision on the other side of town, gave birth to her first child, a boy named Leo. I still remember the day she brought him home from the hospital, everyone cooing and crying, my parents practically floating with joy over becoming grandparents. My mom squeezed my shoulder. "You will be a wonderful aunt," she said. Looking back, I realize now that was the moment everything started to change, even though I could not have known it then. At first, I was genuinely excited to be an aunt. Leo was adorable and I loved making funny faces at him while Megan and Mom chatted over coffee, but that dynamic shifted faster than I could have ever imagined. It started with what seemed like an innocent request one Saturday morning. Megan asked, already putting her purse on her shoulder, "Ava, could you watch Leo for a couple of hours? I really need to run some errands." Before I could answer, she had placed Leo in my arms and was heading for the door. "Thanks, little sis, you are the best." That became the new normal. Every weekend Megan would show up at my parents' house, hand Leo over to me, and simply disappear for hours. Sometimes it was shopping, other times it was lunch with friends or a spa day, always under the guise of needing a break from motherhood. One day, after Megan had been gone for 5 hours, I finally complained to Mom. "It is not fair," I said, frustrated. "I had plans to go to the mall with Jessica today." Mom barely looked up from her magazine. "Family helps family, Ava. Your sister needs this time for herself. You will understand when you are a mother." I was 16 when Haley announced she was pregnant. "It is a girl," she squealed at the family dinner. While everyone celebrated, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Sure enough, when little Sophie arrived, history repeated itself with a vengeance. Now my weekends were a circus of managing 3-year-old Leo and baby Sophie. Try helping a toddler build block towers while trying to soothe a crying infant. It is not as fun as it sounds. And homework? Forget about it. Not until both were taking a nap, if they ever napped at the same time. One Saturday, while bouncing Sophie on my hip and watching Leo color on our coffee table instead of his coloring book, I said to my dad, "Mark invited me to the movies tonight." "Well," he replied with his eyes glued to the football game on television, "you should have thought about that before agreeing to watch the kids." My voice rose with frustration. I never agreed. Nobody ever asks me. The sudden noise made Sophie start to cry. From the kitchen, Mom scolded me. Lower your voice. You are upsetting the baby. And stop being selfish. Your sisters need this support. I started spending my free time in the school library researching colleges. Not just any college, ones very far from home. I threw myself into studying, knowing that good grades were my ticket out. Every A on my report card was one step closer to freedom. When my acceptance letter from a university several states away arrived, including a partial scholarship, I felt I could finally breathe. But my family, they had other plans. It was during what they called a family meeting, but I called an intervention. Megan made the first suggestion. The community college here has a great business program. You could live at home and save money. And help out with the kids, Haley added cheerfully, as if that were a selling point. I looked around our living room at their expectant faces. Mom, Dad, Megan, Haley, and Grandma Eleanor, who had been unusually quiet throughout the entire discussion. Suddenly, Grandma Eleanor's voice cut through the tension like a knife. Actually, she said, and everyone turned to look at her. I think that university is perfect for Ava, she continued, her voice steady. That program is exactly what she needs for her future career. And her grandfather's college trust will help cover what the scholarship does not. I could have hugged her right then and there. The family meeting ended with my parents and sisters shooting me looks of disappointment, but I did not care. For the first time in years, I felt I could see my future clearly, and it did not involve being everyone's free babysitter. College life was everything I dreamed of and more. My dorm room became my sanctuary. My classmates became real friends. And for the first time in years, my weekends were my own, with no crying babies, no toddlers with sticky fingers, just me and my choices. But you cannot completely escape family obligations, especially during the holidays. I tried to visit as little as possible. However, Thanksgiving and Christmas were non-negotiable. Mom would call weeks in advance, her voice heavy with expectation. Everyone is asking for you, Ava. The kids miss their aunt. The first Christmas break after I started college, I walked into absolute chaos. Megan now had 2 kids, Leo and his new little brother Noah. Haley had managed to add a boy named Max to her family alongside Sophie. But that was not even the half of it. The moment I walked through the door, my aunt yelled, Ava! She immediately steered her 5-year-old twins in my direction. The kids have been asking about you. No, they have not, I thought. They barely know who I am. But before I could protest, my cousin's 7-year-old daughter clung to my leg, followed closely by my other cousin's 9-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter. Ava, honey, Mom called from the kitchen, barely visible behind a mountain of dishes. Why don't you take the kids upstairs to your room? I will bring up some snacks later. And just like that, I was herding 8 children up the stairs, feeling more like a sheepdog than a college student. My old bedroom turned into a war zone. Toys everywhere, juice spills on my childhood quilt, and crayon marks mysteriously appearing on the walls. Hours passed, my stomach growling as delicious smells drifted up from downstairs, where the adults were enjoying their peaceful holiday dinner. When Mom finally appeared with a plate of goldfish crackers and juice boxes, she barely made eye contact. By the time I managed to sneak downstairs at 8 o'clock after coordinating with various parents to collect their exhausted children, the dining room was empty. Empty except for dirty dishes and picked-over serving platters. Haley was already putting on her coat. Oh, Ava, Max was an angel with you, right? We have to go. It is past his bedtime. Megan did the same, gathering her kids while chatting with Mom about New Year's plans. My aunt was helping her twins put on their snow boots while my cousins carried their sleeping kids to their cars. Not a single thank you. Not one person asked if I had eaten. Not even a backward glance as they all left, leaving me standing in the middle of the Christmas dinner remains. Then from the kitchen, Mom yelled as if I had not just spent the entire day doing her a massive favor. Ava, be a sweetheart and help me with these dishes. I just stared at the mountain of dirty plates and serving platters. Evidence of a holiday meal I never got to enjoy. Mom's text message arrived during finals week, right as I was finishing my last paper for the semester. My phone buzzed with her usual pre-holiday update, but this one made my blood run cold. It cheerfully read, Megan and Haley are coming with the kids. Plus your aunt and her twins, your cousin Rachel's girls, your cousin Mike's boys. And great news, Megan's sister-in-law is joining us with her 3. It will be a wonderful Christmas with all the little ones. I did the math in my head. 12 kids, 12. I sat there in the library staring at my phone until the screen went dark. Then I turned it back on to make sure I had read it right. The message was still the same, but something inside me finally shifted. 2 years of college had given me perspective. I had seen my roommate Zoe go home for the holidays and return with stories of real family time. Board games, movie nights, proper Christmas dinners. My friend James's biggest complaint about going home was having to share the television remote with his brothers. Meanwhile, I had spent every holiday of my adult life as an unpaid babysitting service. I did not reply to Mom's message. Instead, I packed my bag for Christmas break with an unusual sense of calm. For the first time, I was not dreading the holidays because I was going home with a plan. The days leading up to Christmas were deceptively normal. I helped Mom in the kitchen, breathing in the familiar aromas of her signature dishes, roast turkey, glazed ham, and her famous apple pie. I decorated the Christmas tree, carefully hanging the ornaments I had made in elementary school next to the elegant glass spheres Mom reserved for the front of the tree. Christmas Day arrived with a flurry of activity. Cars started pulling into our driveway, one after another, each bringing more chaos than the last. Megan arrived first with her kids, now 5 and 3 years old, followed closely by Haley with Sophie and Max. The sister-in-law showed up with her 3 kids, all under 7. The rest of the relatives trooped in after them, each family adding more children to the growing crowd. I watched from the corner of the living room as the noise level steadily rose. Megan made her way toward me with the youngest balanced on her hip while the oldest tugged at her sleeve. "Ava," she yelled with that familiar tone, the one that meant she was about to offload her parental duties. "The kids have been so excited to see you. They cannot wait to play with their favorite aunt." She was already pushing them in my direction, just the way she had done 100 times before. But this time was different. This time I stood my ground and looked her straight in the eyes. "No," I said. My voice was steady despite my racing heart. "I am not babysitting today. I am here to enjoy Christmas just like everyone else." The room did not exactly fall silent. There were too many kids for that. But I could feel the shockwave move through the adults. Megan's mouth fell wide open. Mom froze in the doorway with a tray of appetizers. Dad looked up from his newspaper with raised eyebrows. Haley's panicked voice cut across the room. "But who is going to watch all the kids?" As I turned toward the stairs, I looked back just long enough to see Mom's helpless shrug and the bewildered looks on everyone's faces. The scene almost made me laugh. They looked as if someone had just told them Christmas was canceled. My feet carried me up the familiar stairs, past the family photos that marked my sister's many accomplishments, and I walked into my childhood bedroom. The soft click of the door shutting behind me felt like the period at the end of a very long sentence. I collapsed onto my bed, the same twin bed I had owned since middle school, and let out a long sigh. Downstairs I could hear the muffled sounds of chaos. Adult voices rising and falling. Children crying. The occasional thud of something dropping or being thrown. Fragments of conversation filtered through the floorboards. Can you believe her? How selfish. Back in my day. It made me smile that they were talking, that they were finally facing the reality of taking care of their own children. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "You did it. You finally stood up to them. Operation Freedom is in progress." I replied, currently hiding in my room while they figure out how to raise their own kids. A knock on my door interrupted my texting. "Ava." Mom's voice tried to sound concerned but landed somewhere between annoyed and desperate. "The children are asking for you." I did not move from my comfortable position on the bed. "I am busy, Mom." Her sigh was audible through the door, followed by the sound of her footsteps retreating down the hallway. I went back to my phone, joining a group chat with my college friends who were providing running commentary on their own family holiday dramas. James's uncle had too much to drink again. Miguel's grandmother was asking him when he would find a nice girl. Zoe's brother had brought home a surprise girlfriend. 2 hours passed like that, in peaceful rebellion. My phone vibrated constantly with supportive messages from friends who had heard me complain about holiday babysitting duty for years. The chaos downstairs eventually settled into a different rhythm, one that did not include my participation. When I finally went downstairs for dinner, you would have thought I had risen from the dead judging by everyone's expressions. My aunt actually dropped her fork. My cousin's mouth hung open mid-sentence. I scanned the dining room, noting Haley's conspicuous absence. Through the doorway into the living room, I could see her trying to organize some kind of game with the kids. Her usually perfect hair was coming loose from its elegant updo, a stain of unknown origin on her holiday sweater. Taking my seat at the adult table, a first in recent memory, I examined the feast before me. Everything was still hot, still fresh, still waiting to be enjoyed. No lukewarm leftovers, no picked-over scraps, no half-eaten child portions. I could feel the weight of disapproving stares as I filled my plate with roast turkey, my aunt's sweet potato casserole, and my cousin's famous green bean casserole. The clinking of silverware against plates could not quite mask the tension in the room. I was halfway through enjoying my first proper holiday meal in years when Megan finally snapped. She had been watching me eat with the kind of intensity usually reserved for nature documentaries about predators and prey. "Well," she announced to the table at large, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "It looks like someone got a big head at college. It seems she forgot all her sisterly duties." I took my time with my spoonful of mashed potatoes, deliberately licking the spoon before answering. The food really was excellent when you could eat it fresh. "How funny about sisterly duties," I replied, keeping my voice level and calm. "I do not recall seeing free babysitter in any sisterhood manual. Maybe you could point that chapter out to me. Right after the part where parents are supposed to take care of their own children." The gasps around the table would have been comical if they were not so genuine. My aunt actually clutched her pearl necklace. I did not know people really did that outside of movies. My cousin was suddenly very interested in her dinner roll, while her husband looked like he was trying to disappear into his chair. Mom and Dad exchanged that special look they had, the one that meant they were disappointed but did not want to cause a scene. Dad's fork froze halfway to his mouth, and Mom's smile had grown tight around the edges. But instead of the lecture I expected, Mom cleared her throat and asked my uncle about his new job. The conversation stuttered back to life, though everyone kept shooting me glances as if they expected me to sprout a second head. I just kept eating, savoring every bite of food that had not been picked at by little hands or gone cold while I changed diapers. About 20 minutes after dinner, Haley appeared in the doorway. She looked as if she had been through a war. Her Christmas sweater now sported what looked like juice stains, in addition to the earlier unknown substance, and her hair had completely escaped its elegant updo. "Megan," she called, her voice carrying a hint of desperation. "Could you?" Megan shot me one last glaring look before excusing herself from the table. The sisters swapped places, with Haley practically collapsing into the empty chair. She looked exhausted, with the kind of bone-deep fatigue I had been feeling every holiday for years. Haley filled her plate mechanically, but she could not resist shooting me a dirty look between bites. I returned her gaze and shrugged. Then I went back to enjoying my dinner. After finishing my meal, including 2 servings of Mom's apple pie, a luxury I had never been able to enjoy before, I quietly excused myself from the table. Nobody protested. Nobody asked me to help clean up. Nobody demanded that I take a shift with the kids. The morning light filtered through the living room windows as I walked down the stairs, still riding the high of my peaceful Christmas night. That feeling evaporated the moment I saw them. Mom, Dad, Megan, and Haley, sitting in an obvious ambush formation. Megan wasted no time. "What kind of performance was that yesterday?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Making us look like bad parents in front of everyone." I sank into an armchair, surprisingly calm. "Performance? You mean me wanting to enjoy Christmas like everyone else? I am just tired of being the unpaid and unappreciated babysitter, while everyone else gets a real holiday." "But you never complained before," Mom interrupted, her brow furrowed in confusion. I could not help but laugh. "I never complained. I have been complaining for years, Mom, but it was too convenient to ignore me, wasn't it? Too easy to keep exploiting the good little sister who never causes trouble." Everyone started talking at once, their voices overlapping in a chorus of accusations and reminders of sisterly duty and family obligation. Dad kept mentioning how much they had done for me over the years. Mom brought up how well they had raised me, and my sisters alternated between guilt-tripping me and outright attacks. I let them run out of steam before speaking again. They are not my children, I said quietly but firmly. I did not give birth to them. I did not decide to have them. They are your responsibility, not mine. Especially during the holidays, when I am supposed to be resting too. That was when Megan played what she thought was her trump card. She stood up, her face flushed with anger. Well, maybe it is time someone taught you a lesson about gratitude. Let us see how you manage without Mom and Dad paying your college tuition. The room fell silent. I watched Mom and Dad exchange uncertain glances, clearly taken aback by this suggestion. But instead of the panic Megan clearly expected to see on my face, I felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, all the cards were on the table. I stood up slowly. Actually, Megan, Grandma Eleanor has been paying my tuition from Grandpa's college trust. I let that sink in. You know, the one he set up for all his granddaughters. The same fund that helped pay for your nursing school and Haley's business school. And even if that were not the case, I have a partial scholarship. Besides, unlike some people, I am not afraid to work to support myself. Without waiting for her response, I turned around and went upstairs. It took me less than 10 minutes to pack my bags. I had gotten good at traveling light over the years. When I came back down, Mom and Dad started calling after me. Their voices were a mix of anger and panic, but I was done talking. I walked out the front door, letting it shut behind me on their protests and recriminations. The winter air bit at my cheeks as I walked to my car, but I barely felt it. The drive back to college was strangely peaceful. As the miles increased between home and me, I systematically blocked their numbers. Mom, Dad, Megan, Haley. Every tap on my phone screen felt like breaking another link in a chain I had not even realized was weighing me down. My dorm room welcomed me back with its blessed simplicity. No toys scattered on the floor, no sticky fingerprints on the windows, no constant background noise of kids demanding attention. Just my books, my laptop, and my own thoughts. January passed in a blur of new classes and quiet weekends. February brought snow and a blessed lack of family drama. I threw myself into my studies, made plans with friends, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was living my own life instead of existing on the margins of everyone else's. Then, one cold Saturday morning in late February, I looked out my dorm window and saw them. Mom, Dad, and Haley standing in the parking lot, looking unsure and out of place among the students rushing back and forth. My first instinct was to pretend I was not home. But something in their body language made me stop. They looked different, smaller somehow, less like authority figures and more like people who had driven 4 hours to fix a mistake. I met them in the lobby. Haley spoke first. "Can we treat you to a coffee? We would like to talk." The campus coffee shop was quiet that morning. We sat at a corner table, steam rising from our mugs, the silence heavy with unspoken words. Mom was the first to break it. "We have been thinking a lot," she started, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her mug. "After you left, well, we had some long conversations as a family." "Very long conversations," Haley added, meeting my gaze directly. "Ava, we were wrong. All of us. We took advantage of you for years and called it family duty to make ourselves feel better about it." Dad cleared his throat. "We did not realize, or maybe we did not want to realize, how unfair it was. You deserved your own holidays, your own time. You deserved to be treated like an adult, not like the family babysitter." I took a long sip of my coffee, letting their words settle. "What about Megan?" Haley sighed. "Megan. She is still processing it. You know how she is. She has a hard time admitting when she is wrong. But the rest of us want to do better. Things will be different now," Mom promised. "No more dumping the kids on you. No more expecting you to give up your holidays. We want you to come home because you want to, not because you are needed to babysit." I studied their faces, the sincerity in Mom's eyes, the regret in Dad's expression, the openness in Haley's posture. "Okay," I finally said. "I believe you." That afternoon after they left, I unblocked their numbers. Within minutes, I had a text from Haley. "I miss you, little sis. Truly." This time, the following months brought a new normal. I visited home on a few weekends and it was actually nice. When Haley brought her kids over, She watched them herself or they hired a babysitter. Mom stopped trying to orchestrate family bonding moments that always seem to end with me in charge of a herd of children. Megan and I still have not spoken. Sometimes I see her posts on social media. Pictures of her kids growing up so fast. A part of me hopes that someday she will realize what she did wrong, that she will be the one to reach out first. Until then, I am at peace with the distance. Comment. Setting healthy boundaries with the people we love the most can often feel like the hardest thing to do. We sometimes forget that saying no is actually a powerful act of self-respect. True family connection should be built on mutual care, rather than silent expectations and forced obligations. Walking away from an unfair dynamic gives us the space we need to heal and find our own peace. Protecting your mental health does not mean you lack love or kindness for others. It simply means you are finally taking responsibility for your own well-being. I hope this reminds you that your time and energy are valuable gifts. You always have the right to step back when a situation no longer feels safe or respectful. Choosing your own peace is a brave step toward living a more authentic life. I would love to read your thoughts on how you honor your personal boundaries in the comments below. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.